Alright, we're going to go over two things in this tutorial. First one is cloning, and the second one is snaps. So the first thing we're going to do is bring in a few teapots. And I'm going to change the colors on them just so we can distinguish them better. Okay. First teapot we're going to clone. So I go to my select and move, go on my x-axis, hold shift and drag one out. It'll ask me how many copies I want to make. I'll say 3. And the object is a copy. What this object is what the objects I will be creating are. So they're going to be copies of the first one. So now I have 4 cloned objects that are copies. And what copies are, they're unique objects. They are not connected to each other in any way other than a snapshot of what the original was. So if I take the first object and I modify it, you can see nothing happens to the others. I add a modifier. I'll grab it and I'll deform it a bit. Oh, I got snaps on, that's for later. I grab the modifier and deform it, and you see nothing happens to the other modifiers. Adversely, if I grab another teapot and modify that, you can see nothing happens to the others as well. Second teapot we're going to do, we're going to work with is going to be an instance of each other. So I'm going to grab this teapot, hold shift, and move on the x-axis. I'm going to make 3 copies again. I'm going to change my cloned objects to instance and explain what this is. Instance copies, all 4 of these objects are now linked to each other actively. That means what I do to one will affect all the others. So I'll grab this first one, I'll apply an edit mesh, and I will grab something and deform it, and you can see the other 4 or the other 3 have the exact same modifier applied. If I get out of this teapot and I look at another one, there's my teapot, there's my edit mesh modifier. Same with the others. If I grab another teapot in that row and I deform it again, you can see it affects the other teapots as well. Again, an instance means what I do to one will affect all the others that I have made an instance clone from. This is good when working with a bunch of items at once, and what you do to one you do to the others. This is good for synchronizing animations or objects that may be melting together, or even better, if you have static objects and you want to give them some character, now they can move around. So for instance, I'm going to change this to auto key, set this to 0, go to 100, set this to let's go 40. Here we'll go down to 0. Actually, we're going to go negative 25, 35. We're going to go to 25, and here we'll go to 15. We're going to go negative 10. And you can see that these teapots are now dancing a little bit, and we've got a little bit of characteristic to them. Here we go, that's a little better. Grab the first key, bring it to the last so that they start and end in the same spot. There we go. So we've got a little bit of character animation with these teapots. Now again, if I were to do that with these purple teapots, I would have to animate each one individually. This saves me the time. Now I can change the timing on all of these as well. So if I wanted some to dance Oh, I'm sorry. That we'll save that for the reference. That's one of the differences. So these will all stay in unison. What I do to one will affect all the others. The last teapot I'm going to work with is another clone. I'm going to reference clone this. So I'm going to drag this out. I'm going to go 3 copies again. I'm going to change this to a reference. And what reference means is similarly to the instance copies, what I do to one will affect the others. I'm going to turn off my auto key. Will affect the others. So edit mesh. I grab this teapot. Just trying to make something a little unique. Here we go. And what I do to one will affect the others. If I grab another teapot and I go to edit mesh and I grab a little chunk here, a polygon, and I pull this up. I'll pull it down. I don't want to deform it too bad. Pull it down. You can see that this does not affect the other teapots. So what's happening is that all these teapots are linked to this original master teapot, but they can take on qualities of their own as well. I'll melt this one, for instance, and you can see it does not affect the others. However, if I grab this original one and I apply a modifier, another modifier to it, for instance, melt, all the other items will melt. So this is a master teapot that the others are mimicking. One way you can see where things start and end is if I grab another teapot. Looking at the modifier list, you can see original teapot, edit mesh, and melt. These are all this first object here. There's a bar here, a thicker bar that you may not have seen yet. Anything above it is what I apply to just this teapot. Everything below it is what's being applied to this teapot and the original teapot. If I go to this last teapot, you can see there's 2 melts, the one I applied earlier and the one I just applied to the original teapot. If for some reason you want to grab a teapot and apply another modifier, we'll say a mesh smooth, it's too hard to see. Just go with the bend for now, and we make it stretch a little bit here. If I bring this down to the others, now they're all being affected. So it's what happens below and above this bar that affects the reference points. So when you're using reference, the first object will affect all the objects the entire time, as long as your modifier is below the thick stack bar. The other objects can be modified separately, as long as they're above the stack bar. Alright, the second question was for snaps. Snaps are, they work well in 3ds Max, probably not as well as in AutoCAD. Well, they do work as well as in AutoCAD, but they don't seem to be as specific. What I'm going to do is bring in a cube, a box here, okay, and I'm going to add some teapots on this box. One quick way of snapping to this box is I go click on teapot. There's a little button right here called Auto Grid. Auto Grid will let me build anywhere on an object. You can see my gizmo changes as I move. The z-axis moves. So if I build a teapot on this side, I go up here, I build a teapot. What's happening is that there's a perfect connection between the teapot and the cube. Okay, that happens everywhere. And in fact, if I grab one of these teapots and I give it lots of little baby teapots, doesn't matter where I'm at, it's going to grab onto it. Actually, that was off. This one was on. Okay. So it doesn't matter where I'm at. Okay. Additionally, you have other snap options. So I take one of these teapots I have. I go to angle snap and I change to rotate. You can see that my teapot will rotate in 5-degree increments. This is perfect for going to 90 degree, 180 degree, and so forth, 270, 360, and further angled increments in any axis. If I turn this off, you'll see that I have an infinite amount. Sometimes it's not specific. 52.49 for instance, as opposed to 50. That's angle snap. Percent snap affects scaling. At the bottom here you can see this object is at 100% scale. I can scale it up 120, 170, 190, 220 and so forth, or on one axis at a time, z-axis. Additionally, one thing to play with is if you click and hold the select uniform scale, you can see there's three options. The other one that is used mostly is this bottom one, and what happens is this keeps the mass of the object. So if I were to scale it up, it will get skinnier. You don't usually want percent scale on that. If I lower it, it will spread itself out, but the mass will stay the same, the amount of volume. And the last one is snaps toggle. And this is the most important one. It's the biggest one. Well, the last one is spinner snap. Spinner snap toggle will allow me to move in preset dimensions as well. And right now it's set to 3 decimals. Last one is snaps toggle, and what snaps toggle will do is let me build an object, for instance. And if I right click on snaps toggle, I will be given settings, options that I can use. Most of the time, for now at least, use midpoint, endpoint, and grid points. You can play around with these other ones. It basically grabs onto different parts of an object. Those three are the main parts. I could close that, and now you can see. Let me make this box a little bit more detailed. That might be too detailed for now. That's good. You can see now that I can grab onto specific points, midpoints between vertices, as well as corners and endpoints. So if I were to make a wall, I can easily grab this corner and work its way out. I'm going to turn off auto grid though. There we go. And what's happening right now is I'm getting mixed up with the grid points in the back. So I'm going to turn that off. I don't need that on for now. There we go. I'm getting static somewhere else. Oh, I'm hitting these other teapots. Let me work on this side. There we go. So now what I did was reach a perfect corner between the two objects. And I can do that as much as I want. I can start halfway on an object. And it will still be a perfect corner. If I were to grab a cylinder and I want to start in between 2 points, I can grab right here and work my way out. So this is where we can work with snaps a bit. If I create myself a plane, this plane will allow me to build on it. If I had the height snap on, they'd all be the same height. And now I've got 3 walls that are perfectly snapped to this object. Build a sphere right in the middle of these vertices. That's the width of one of those polygons. Start here, go down to this point. It's a perfect 2-segment width. As you're doing this, make sure you are playing with the grid points. You may not want all of them at all times. If you don't want midpoints, for instance, You don't need them. If you only want midpoints, you can have that. Okay, tangents will allow me pull in a sphere with another sphere. Let's crash course on grid and snap toggles.